Hello, hello, Meredith. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I have you on today because I was lucky enough to reach out to you. Well, you reach out to me, kind of both. This is where social media is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
We live in the same town and we know similar people. And I was following you on Facebook, and I personally have been very encouraged and inspired by the way that you live out loud in your life with your struggles with your medical issues. And I got the pleasure of chatting with you not too long ago and hearing more about your story. And I wanted to share that with other people because I think when you use the term chronic illness or invisible illnesses or invisible disabilities, I don't think people understand the brevity of that and how vast that is. There's learning disabilities, there's autoimmune disease, there's so much more than that. So you shared with me that you struggle with endometriosis, a pretty severe case, I think. But who knows? I mean, I did actually have endometriosis. They didn't know I had it until I had my last surgery, my hysterectomy. They noted that it was in there pretty bad, but most people, I think there's a lot of people that walk around with it that don't know it, and other people who struggle like you do on a level that is just completely debilitating. But why I wanted to have a conversation with you is because I think the way you live out loud with your story, but in such an amazing, supportive, positive way. And you share not only the downs, but the ups and what you do. So I think that you encourage other people, whether they're struggling with what you have or not, to kind of do things for themselves that like help them pass through it, pass through the pain, pass through the day, do things that are better. So if you could just start by telling your story, I just wanted to kind of start off saying why I even know you and have you here. So go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the work that you're doing and for your support in helping my journey because it's made all the difference getting to know you. So thank you. Yes. So I struggle with endometriosis. I was misdiagnosed for probably 15 to 20 years.
So what did that look like? What was misdiagnosed? Like, how did
Well,
you feel? And then what?
well, it takes a woman an average of 8 to 10 years to get a proper diagnosis with endometriosis to begin with. So it started with painful periods. I would be home, have to leave school because I was in so much pain. I'd be vomiting. I would, when I got to college, I was often getting taken to the emergency room because I was in so much pain. And they would just say, oh, I probably had an ovarian cyst burst. They just kept putting me on the birth control pill, which, most of us know that have endometriosis and navigate it now. It's not really a solution in a lot of ways. The side effects can make things worse because your hormones are affected. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, the thyroid autoimmune disease. My numbers were definitely off. However, when I started managing my adrenals and my hormones, I was able to put all of that in remission. So I do think, and if the average woman who's diagnosed with endometriosis, I think it's like 85 to 95% are also diagnosed with a thyroid imbalance and other types of autoimmune issues. I
Well,
was,
there's always cross comorbidity
there's
between.
always, I mean,
I mean, I myself have thyroid issues, and I knew that, and arthritis,
right.
rheumatoid arthritis because of the Crohn. So, unfortunately, when you get an autoimmune disease, you just collect others as time goes on because your immune system doesn't operate right. Right?
100%. I think
Yeah.
it's, once inflammation takes over, regardless of the root cause, then your body's in a constant state. I mean, in order to be in a place of healing and to maintain, a sense of being able to take care of yourself and staying grounded on your worst days, I know it's very important to have a belief system that my body is not against me. It's always working for me. It's always working towards alchemy. And there is, the struggle is real. It's, the inflammation is happening in your whole system. Our whole bodies are working to do something and other things get set off. And so oftentimes, we've have this conversation, and I think probably anyone who struggles with any kind of autoimmune or chronic pain or chronic disease, you're navigating like, am I crazy? Because today it's a totally different pain than it was yesterday, and now I can't move my legs today, and I can't. So,
That
you
mental
know,
health component, I think that's what, my platform is really targeting, that mental health component of these, hidden diseases and struggles, illnesses that people have, I think is far greater sometimes of a weight than the actual physical pain, because of how you're treated by just your family doesn't understand, your friends don't understand, the doctors don't understand. And it's just not like a concrete thing you could always show until usually when it becomes a concrete evidence, so to speak, you're like at a point where it's like catastrophic,
right. Right.
right?
Like
Like
you're in
for
the
me, it's
hospital and you're like,
full of
now
blood.
do you believe me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, and that's
Right.
what was happening. So I was constantly thinking like I had a urinary tract infection, or I was just always in pain and always going. And they were like, I don't know what's wrong. Go sending me to the hospital. Maybe it's your appendix. Maybe it's this. And I was probably in and out of the hospital for like 10 times at least within a year. And now also I was on like the tail end of my divorce. So I think that's probably another conversation, but trauma and navigating stress, that's those are like all
Huge,
tools that you provide,
huge.
that really needs to be at the forefront of helping to manage your pain. And I'd also been going to a functional medicine doctor who got to a point where I was saying, I'm doing all the things. I am doing all the things. I'm following all the protocols. And he looked at me and he said, well, if you were doing all the things, you wouldn't still have this pain that you keep describing in your stomach. Maybe what you need to do is go see a psychiatrist. So this is a
That's what
functional
it is.
medicine doctor who
Yeah.
basically told me that I was crazy, and then him and the nurse just sat there and stared at me while I cried, and then I left. And that is what a lot of women I know with endo anyway navigate so much, is doctors dismissing you. And so part of what you're saying in these tools and the mental health component is that, like, no matter, you can find the best doctor, the most qualified, and there are a lot of amazing doctors saving people and helping people every day, all day. However, the only person that knows your body and what you're going through is you. And so, on top of navigating
Yeah.
chronic pain, you also have to be your own educator, put yourself through medical school, like for your
So
particular
great.
disease, become your own advocate constantly, like, and, doctors.
All doing all this while you're not feeling so
Right,
well.
right. Right, you can barely get
Yeah,
out of bed,
yeah,
you're bowled
yeah,
over in pain, and you're like, "Well, it's just an 8 today, so, like, we're
yeah.
fine." When it's a my last one of my last times in the emergency room, I think I was in Florida on a family vacation, and I had to get taken to the emergency room because of the pain. One of the doctors happened to notice fluid in my pelvis and mentioned this disease called endometriosis, which no one had ever mentioned. I had never heard of it.
Wow.
A lot of women find out because they start to, go to the process of getting pregnant and they have difficulty. And I never had difficulty getting pregnant. I had a very hard labor, which in hindsight, some of the doctors mentions was possibly because my uterus was like 10 times the thickness, because I had endometriosis and also a disease called adenomyosis, which is when the disease gets into the muscle. So it's almost like a giant mass was in my uterus, and then
Wow.
the uterine wall gets like super hard and thick. Um, and so that thrusted me into finding out about endometriosis. So then, the doctor, my OB, was basically like, well, your options are get an IUD, try the pill, or have a laparoscopic surgery. There's no diagnostic tools for endometriosis. There's no way for them to do it. And, taking the pill or taking any kind of medication is only masking maybe some of the pain, but causing a lot of other side effects while the disease continues to manifest and grow. And I mean, it's extreme cases, but people are misled to think like it's just like a period disease, or once you get your
Yeah.
uterus taken out, you're
Yeah.
fine, but it can latch onto every internal organ. It can go into your bowels, it can go into your lungs, it can go into your eyeballs. I was scheduled to just have the laparoscopic with him. And the way it was presented was like, well, you could do the laparoscopic. Obviously, it's a little more invasive, but like those are fun for me to do. So then you're like, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I was booked for that, and then happened to come across a documentary about endometriosis and watched it. And I'm listening to these women speak, and I am bawling, thinking, oh my God, for so many years, like I have been going through all of this, but I just thought either I was weak or couldn't handle it or wasn't able to handle pain. And like the fact is, any woman, if you're buckled over in pain and vomiting from your period, it is not normal. It's not a hereditary thing. Grandma had bad periods too.
Yeah.
It is not normal. This like suffering is not normal. So it was just like, and just different. It's not just that pain. I can't move my legs sometimes. It's deep pain in your hips. It takes over your whole body. You get brain fog. You have headaches. You can't eat. You're nauseous. Like,
So it's
I,
just like it's snowballing effect, right? And I bet watching that documentary, which is what I've experienced when sharing my story and why I'm encouraging others to share their story, is that talk about like the one word that comes to my mind is that you're just validated.
the me
It's
too.
it's like it's such a to feel validation, I think is just so important when you're going really anything in life, right? When you're struggling to know that you're not alone, you're not crazy, other people are like this. I mean, we know that we are way behind in women's healthcare.
Yeah.
Um, things are heavily funded and researched when they affect both male and female, primarily male. So it doesn't surprise me that we are so behind on this and that doctors are not aware of what really is going on. Not that I'm defending the situation, but the reality of it is a lot of these doctors you probably saw were never schooled in medical school about this.
They don't. Well, and
Autoimmune disease is not something that people, I feel, are really aware of until they have a loved one or they have a patient that all of a sudden becomes like I was one of those. Like I taught a lot of my doctors who I still stay in touch with a lot about what autoimmune disease was when they saw so many horrible things happening to me in different ways other than just my intestines.
Well, and you navigated it way before it was even a
Even
conversation.
a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's when I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. The only reason I knew about it was because I'd seen a friend go through it. And the only reason I knew not to go the medication route was because I saw what an awful journey she had. And that's the same. So, what this documentary said was, under no circumstances should you get a laparoscopic surgery by your regular OB. Nothing against regular OBs, like, but they're schooled in. I have a friend who's an OB in Alaska. She says, "I'm schooled in catching babies."
Yeah.
um, like it's a different thing. And this disease, like, there's just not a lot about it, and there isn't a way to properly diagnose it. They're not going to see it in an ultrasound. They're not going to see it, a little bit. A doctor that really knows what they're doing may be able to take an educated guess that they see it there. So all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, like literally in 3 days, I'm scheduled to go in with this doctor who said it would be fun to see what was going on. And then often how they are educated is, if you find the lesions, then do ablation. So then they just cauterize, which
Yep.
then the disease is still there. Now there's scar tissue on top of the disease. And then all of that starts like meshing the different organs together. It just makes everything 10 times worse. The average woman, I'm like low on the totem as far as surgeries, but I also only got diagnosed, it was like the tail end of 2017. I got diagnosed.
Oh, so
Uh,
you've only been diagnosed 5 years.
I got diagnosed, right, which was when I
Wow.
got diagnosed and I went into my first surgery. I knew nothing. I knew nothing except
Wow.
for what I heard on that documentary, and so and saying like, make sure you find a doctor that does excision, that doesn't do ablation. And so we canceled that laparoscopic with the OB, who again is like a great doctor for lots of other things, and went to someone who is
Like specializes.
the top surgeon in endometriosis in New York City. And so very quickly it was like, you know, I know what you have. We have to get in there. He did recognize a mass that was in my uterus that now we're talking, I mean, probably 12 to 15 ultrasounds in a year, and not one person recognized this giant mass um, hanging out in my uterus. But so when he went in, did the surgery, I was stage 4, which is kind of the extreme of endo. They had to remove my uterus, my cervix, my fallopian tubes, do like a suspension of my bladder because
Yeah, that's what I have.
it
Yeah.
was prolapsing. Yeah, it's like a trapeze in there.
They call, is it sling? Is it a sling?
Yeah. Yes. I
Yeah.
just, it's like a circus.
Yeah. I view like I think of a hammock, my body.
That, yeah, it's not, because it's not the mesh.
Yeah.
And again, like I went in not knowing there was a chance, but not like I came out, and that's when you're like, oh, well, we removed, a big portion of your organs, which is a whole nother part of the healing process that you go through, which I didn't expect, like the grieving. I had just been remarried. I would have loved to have, um, another child with him, and we have 4 beautiful kids and are super blessed, so that wasn't the journey, but there's just a lot
Did
that,
you go into the surgery not knowing he was going to do a hysterectomy?
yeah, I did not know
Oh,
for
wow.
sure. It was
Mhm.
like, this may need to happen depending on what we see.
I see. Okay.
um and with the adenomyosis, there's really no option to, they have to take it out, so only
So
reason
he did the right call. He did the right call.
he did the right call when it comes to that. Well, there's mixed feelings about some of it with surgeons I'm seeing now that are looking at my
Well,
record.
actually, okay, so you're bringing up a topic that I think is really important. So when I used to travel all over the country and talk about my last company, Ostomy Secrets, I loved getting in front of nurses and surgeons particularly because, and I think we're getting better right now. This is going back 10 years ago, 5, 10 years ago. There was so much about my story that they resonated because I was one of those extreme cases. So like I actually got their attention.
Mhm.
And there were a few things I would always slide in there to let them know that their words and their actions, when you're a patient and you say it, you never forget it, good or bad, good or bad. The power and the authority that they have is really a gift that cannot be taken lightly. And I say this to the nurses too, but particularly surgeons, right? I mean, they're cutting you open. I mean, it's, and this one surgeon said to me, and I mean, Meredith, he was a wonderful human being. Okay. But and this is where I go to the education. I really want to go back and get involved in educating and talking to surgeons and doctors and nurses again to build them up because they have, like, they do so much good. They put us back together when we're broken. Right. But this one, he drew on the board. When they opened me up, they didn't know what they were going to take. Same thing. Right. And he drew on the board, large intestine, small intestine, all that stuff. And he was like, well, we think that we're going to go in and just take a piece of your large intestine. And he drew that. And he's like, that's called a colostomy. I'm like, okay. And he said, but worst case scenario, absolutely worst case scenario, we're going to have to remove the whole large intestine, your entire colon. I'm like, okay, what does that result in? Something called an ileostomy. I'm like, how's that? He's like, that's worst case scenario. It's really hard to manage. We're aiming for the colostomy. It's super difficult to live with, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, guess what I woke up with? An ileostomy.
Yes.
Right? So right away,
Reframing.
right? Like, and I think, there was another situation where I walked into another surgery to get my hysterectomy done, as well as I was having severe Crohn's in a rectum that was not connected because I had my ileostomy. and it was covered in disease, causing lots of pain and abscesses and all kinds of gross things. So they were taking both out. And I had a whole team of doctors in front of me say to me, just want to make sure you're fully aware. I'm in the gown, the IV is going. Make sure you're fully aware that you have two very serious surgeries today, as if I wasn't aware. I'm like, at this point, I'm in like my mid 30s, Meredith. Like, I'm not like, in my 20s.
Yeah.
Like I'm in my mid 30s. They know everything that's happened. They've known my history. I've had this for like 30 years. And they said, we're having two very permanent surgeries. You're never going to be able to connect or remove your ostomy ever again if we remove your rectum. And you're never going to be able to have another child. Okay. Now, are you okay with that? You're so young. Are you sure? All this stuff. Now, I mean, just give me a little credit. I came to the hospital knowing these two surgeries are happening.
Right.
I don't need to be like sucker punched. Yes, I know I can never have another child again. Like I had already gone through those emotions, so I think it's delivery, but I will 100% tell you that the way I knew these people very well. And they were amazing doctors, but their intentions were 100% amazing. Like in no way, but it was just, I think that there's some schooling or maybe pausing on everyone's part to just like take a second and just like think about your patient, maybe ask them a few questions. If they show that they really don't understand what's going on, then absolutely say that. Right. Yeah. But if they've taken the time to ask, like, Lisa, are you aware, with hysterectomy, we see that you have a child, you had one birth. Mm-hmm. And I would have been like, you know what, this is a decision I made. I'm fully aware and it sucks. And they would have been like, okay. Like instead of just jumping to the conclusion that I was unaware. With you, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? He might have said, well, we don't know, but he could have maybe said, okay, so this is going to happen. Are you okay with this? This is going to be the ramifications.
And on the other side, he really came in saying like, I've got it. I know exactly what to do. When you come out of this surgery, you'll be great. Your whole life will be changed. You'll never have pain again. Like that is how he pre-framed for me. So we sort of left like, well, what other option is there?
When did your issue start after that surgery?
Well, so
that was insane.
So I had that surgery and I was going through my like recovery and when I went to my 6-week checkup, I said, something is wrong. I'm like, I have been doing all the things. This recovery is not what you said. I am feeling this pressure that is, beyond, it's just not right. And
so tip number 1, always follow your gut, follow your voice, right? Yeah. We've all had situations like that.
Right. Well, yeah, this is what I say.
And advocate. If you if you get the feeling that they may not be understanding or hearing you, speak enough so they do.
You do, because this is why I say now, it's all about trusting your gut 100%. And so he said, you're fine. Everything's fine. He gave me a very quick exam and just sort of kept ignoring this pressure. And I even got in the car and called my mom on the way home. And I'm like, that's so weird. Like, it's been a really hard 6 weeks. This recovery has not been what was described. I told him about the pressure. He told me to go home, exercise, like get out of my head. And so the next morning I woke up and was like, well, I guess the doctor knows best, even though,
something was telling you something was wrong.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I did what he told me to do. And by that afternoon, I was like, hanging over the toilet, nauseous. I was buckled over in pain. Kind of, a long story short, I called him and said, something's really wrong. He said, just go home and lie down. And when I got home, I went to go to the bathroom and it felt like a baby's head crowning. That's when I stood up and my intestines fell out and I caught them in my hand in between my knees. So now and then, 911, 2 different hospitals, 6 hours of surgery, 3 different surgeons. I almost lost my life. Like, that's a whole nother long story. So then we have now I'm in a whole nother situation of, oh my gosh, and I didn't trust myself. And now your body can like literally fall apart. How am I ever going to trust my body again? I teach movement and somatic movement and all of that for a living. Movement and dance and yoga is like my Prozac. Like, what, like now,
How am
what?
I going to move forward? Yeah.
And when I went back to him, he, didn't like the fact that then I was saying, like, he's like, you know, he went to examine me and I got very emotional and he got offended and he said, everything is going to be fine. And I'm like, well, that's what you told me,
When I was last in here and then I caught my intestines.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
right now yeah. And so when he went to examine me, he got super impatient and he took this is graphic a bit, took his whole fist and put it in me and pulled it out and grabbed the ultrasound stick and stuck it in and pulled it out and said, "You're fine. See, you're fine." And he looked at my husband and said, "Maybe you just need to have as much sex with her as possible so she can get out of her head." Now, I just gone through major surgery, almost lost my life. My insides literally fell out. Um, and this is the only person I know to be helping and supporting me. And that was that, right? I got dressed. I actually could not
That's
even
wonderful.
physically speak because if I let it out, which, I have other ways to release that anger, but like it would have been awful. I didn't speak for almost an hour. My husband was like, "I'm not really sure what's happening right now," but my whole body, my whole nervous system was like, and then
But
you're
I
so
just want to pause a second because I'm
yeah.
actually coming out with, um, and if it's, I don't know when this is going to air, whether it's out already or about to come out, but I'm coming out with something kind of advice on how to manage doctor-patient relationships. And so I'm a huge, like I've been really fortunate. I am not a doctor bashing person, but the big thing I get from your story is that that appointment that you went to, that you called your mom, the appointment before all of that stuff, having
Mhm.
something's wrong and he didn't address it. It was weird. That is a section in what I wrote about, that when you have a feeling that your doctor, like doctors relationships and patients relationships, it's like marriage, it's like friendship.
Mhm.
Some you click with and some you don't. And if you don't, it doesn't help you or them. It's just not a match.
Yeah.
And so, what I think is important about your story, obviously a lot of things, but this one aspect of you left and you knew something had not been addressed, right? I want to encourage people to believe in that, like take that feeling and then go to another doctor. Like, you know what? Something wasn't clicking. Not
Mhm.
that he's a bad person, whatever. Maybe the other reality is doctors are humans,
Right.
right? And they have things going on in their own life. And who knows what happened in his world that day?
Right.
Who knows? Maybe you thought you were communicating a certain way and he didn't get it. Maybe you were talking two different languages.
Mhm.
Whatever the case, right? It just didn't work. So that's where in your story is so powerful, because imagine, and again, you don't live in the past, but you could take your lessons learned and share them with others,
Well
right?
well,
And
you have
so if
yeah.
you were able to reach out, and obviously he was a specialist in the field and it would have been very difficult, but say you had, say your mom or so there was another voice in you that said, call someone else, figure it out, like call someone else, and gave you that strength, given that you were still healing post-op and were very tired. This is where support systems are very key, right?
Yeah.
To say go. And my guess is, and I talked about this in the pamphlet, is that we grew up with parents that don't question doctors. So your mom probably didn't even think to mention to you, maybe you should go get a second opinion. Maybe you should go think about it, like seeing if someone else could pick up something, because we grew up in an era where our parents, you did what the doctor said. And that's good to a point. Not really, not if something is not feeling settled. So
No,
anyway, I just wanted
yeah.
to pause on that part of the story because I think that's a huge, huge learning lesson going forward for people who hear your story.
You have to be
Um,
your own best advocate. You
yeah,
have to. And it is exhausting and it's overwhelming sometimes. But this is why, like, people will reach out to me now and say, oh, like, so and so, might have endometriosis. Would you mind if I gave them your number? And I'm like, no, because the first thing, of course not. And the first thing, is you have to find other people that navigate it. You have to find that because you really have to. I didn't know enough. I wasn't educated enough on my own body, on this disease. I didn't know what questions that I could have been asking, and I wasn't trusting. Like, this is kind of like the healing journey, or the lessons or the teachings that I share a lot. I call it's like BYOB, becoming your own bestie, because like
I
you have
love it. I
you
love
have
it.
to, that is so much of navigating anything in life. But those hard times, like, my body, my gut, my instincts were telling me that I knew something
Yeah,
wasn't right, and
yeah.
I didn't know how to, use my voice louder, or I just kept deferring. But I
But
also,
you were doubting. It's that doubt. And
and
unfortunately, it's that doubt is then reinforced by other people who haven't lived that journey. So if you had connection, so say you and I knew each other at that point, okay? Because this happens a lot. I get a lot of people that
right,
call me, which is
yes,
why I started Secrets of Weapons for a platform, right? Because people call me all the time and they'll talk like I just don't feel right. And so I've been in that place as you, right? And so I have said this conversation to other people. If something isn't right, don't let anyone else convince you that you're crazy. Keep digging, talking, figuring out. Don't just accept it if you're not at peace with it. Because you were still healing and exhausting. And this is the hard part about chronic illness and these situations is you're so exhausted.
you're
You
desperate for
default.
an answer. You're
Yeah.
desperate for a solution. And
Yeah.
I mean, the process, I mean, I think for a lot of like finding this, what's going on with you when it's these kind of autoimmune, like different kinds of issues.
Yeah.
I had been broken down and dismissed for so many years, expressing pain and being told like it's
It's in
not
your head.
fine, it's in my head. Like, so
You start to think that maybe it
right,
is in my head.
that's where like the work needs to be done. And again, like, yeah, you have to surround yourself with people who really keep affirming, like, if you don't feel like something's right, then it's not right. There is no other like question about it, and you have to go to
Keep
people,
digging.
right?
Keep
And
digging.
again, in the moments where you're in, and you can't, I'm someone who's like, I got this, I can go alone, and now it's like, no, I need someone with me at every appointment, because I'm too invested emotionally that sometimes you think like I'm ready and I'm going in and I have these questions, and then the minute you start having the conversation with the doctor, like, there's a lot of trauma we go
Not
through.
overwhelmed.
So
Well,
you
that,
have
that
to
was actually something else I used to talk about with the doctors was nurses, even nurses. This dealt with nurses all the time because they usually get battered by, and I say battered loosely, by the patients more, right?
yeah,
And
totally.
I would say to them, I am not making excuses for patients who have ill will or are rude to you. That does not excuse any behavior. But what I did say to them, if you will just walk through with me where you're seeing someone for the first time in a traumatic state, like when you went into the hospital and this happened, right? Those doctors had no idea the level of emotional trauma and the experiences that you had up until that time with doctors and nurses, right? And so you come as a patient with we all have, our own backpack full of stuff,
Yeah.
all this baggage, right?
Mhm.
Good and bad. And so a lot of times I say to the nurses, particularly I was talking specifically with people who have Crohn's, right? If they're at this state of surgery, they have had a long life of, pooping themselves and being embarrassed and pain beyond pain and, you know, excruciating pain that you can't even breathe through, going to the ER and being dismissed. And, I heard stories of people going to the ER and people thought they were drug addicts, just wanted to have like, the painkillers and, all this happens. And then they come and they're in the hospital and they see you. Right. And all it takes is a few people to maybe who had a bad day that might said a comment or maybe just didn't take a minute to be a little more compassionate, to cause you to feel so unheard and so hurt that then you kind of carry that backpack around. Now, with all due respect, I also talk about that it's our responsibility to check that baggage at the door. Okay. Obviously, when you're in pain and in a crisis, you can't really do, that so well, but to check it at the door to say, okay, this is a new doctor. This is a new experience. I'm not going to take, it's like being married again, right? I'm not going to take my old baggage from my first divorce and take it to this other relationship. But I think that's a really hard thing to do. This is where I'm constantly advocating. So some people call me a patient advocate. And I actually don't think, I think patient empowerment is a more fitting title, and that Secrets of Lemons is an empowerment platform, because I think it's a two-way street.
It
You know,
is.
I,
And
you
yeah,
know,
like that can be a slippery slope. I mean, there's a woman who does this patient advocating for endo. And I mean, she is one of the top educators on social media for endometriosis. And I don't know what the world of women who navigate this disease like would do without
without,
her. However, we can't defer. Like, so something I talk about is our abilities, right? Like part of it is building into trust of like the possibilities and your capabilities, but responsibility is a huge one. And I'll say, what has happened to us isn't necessarily our fault, but it is our responsibility to decide to choose, to take our power to choose and decide how we're going to move forward with it, how
right
we're,
there. Wait, you got to say that again. That is the nugget.
yeah.
Say that again. That
What
was amazing.
happens to us is not our fault, but it is our responsibility to choose how we're going to move forward in empowerment, and heal. And that's
Well,
like,
and it leads me to the next thing, which I think is amazing that you've done. So through all this, okay, you're still dealing with your health issues.
Mhm.
You're in a better place than the intestines falling out, but you're still working through stuff like most people are. But what I think is so telling, while you're still dealing with your medical stuff, share where you pull joy from. I mean, obviously your family and you have, children and a wonderful
Right.
husband and support.
But
But
again, it can't
for
be,
you, what do
yeah,
you do for you?
because it's an inside job. And, I mean, I just, it's part of like my makeup, but I do feel like we all have to, part of that responsibility and choice is like choosing to find like the gold nuggets in the hard, right? Like choosing, what am I learning out of this, and how can what's the purpose? Where's the purpose? And so I'd been teaching, yoga and meditation and all of that for a really long time. And it sort of morphed into, like, wow, now I can't move my body, but if I can't move my body, I can work with energy and I can move my breath. And I was dealing with going into kind of like a hole of depression and all this fear and all this trauma coming up. And I kind of turned, for me it was like, how can I like dive into all these healing practices and learn how will it help me, and then how can I share that with others. So like part one was kind of learning all of these new tools that I think, I started that journey even in the first recovery of my first surgery, and some of those tools I believe really saved my life through when I had the intestinal prolapse. And then now, I'm navigating the pain kind of out of 10, a lot of days, had another hospital stint, dealing with looking for surgeons, needing surgery, insurance not covering any of it, not, like not getting the help that I need, the current situation. And again, like these tools are imperative for me to stay in alignment. And, you do get to be gifted with a sense of like coming close to the edge of like feeling really like, holy shit, I'm like, could leave this earth and leave my family. You come back around and you're like, okay, well,
Grateful to be here.
right. And we
Yeah.
also can't waste any time. And I have been a choreographer and a dancer forever. And I have been, slowly trying to make connections around here, feeling like, it's as a mom and, having another career, getting to the city isn't really accessible, but, we have to keep living our purpose. We have to keep tapping into the things that fill us up. And so I started a dance company that is, it's actually, it was a year ago yesterday that all these women came together.
Oh, that's awesome.
And again, like it doesn't, maybe it's not endometriosis, but it was all women who, have this professional background. It's their soul, it's their soul healing, it's their soul connection to make art in this way. And every single one of them in the beginning was like, well, I don't know, like I navigate this, or I don't know if I can move this way, or I can't do this. And I was like, let's just show up and do what we love. And
Together. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the greatest joy of it. Like we had an extremely successful first show, and everything we do, we want to connect and give back to local charities and bring awareness to, you know,
So I
things.
unfortunately I wasn't able to get to the show. I was trying to make it work and surprise you, but I couldn't get there. And so so the show. So you guys. So how many dancers are in your company right now?
So we have about 15 dancers, and that's like there's a couple different like components. But so 10 to 15 consistent dancers. It's a women led intergenerational. The ages are from 38 to 70 is our
Oh,
oldest
so
dancer.
awesome. Yeah.
All had professional backgrounds as dancers or choreographers, or maybe they have a degree in dance and teach dance. Some are there because they just want to dance and perform. Others are happy to step in to, choreograph. It's on their heart. So we do contemporary, modern dance. It's a blend of, storytelling, kind of like what we're doing. How the premise was, how can we kind of create experiences where we're bringing professional dance and this art form into our community, as well as, share empowering stories. So it's sort of like your favorite soul session meets your favorite choreographer, and also bring people into the process and the inspiration. Like it's never too late to do what you love. That term, like, well, that ship has sailed. No, like
No, it
if it's
hasn't sailed.
something
Yeah.
that's on your heart, that's never the case. It's all possible. And we teach a class called "So You Think You Can't Dance" for anyone who, wants to just try. And it is like the classes, there's a mix. There's the professional dance company members in the class, and there's people who have never taken a dance class in their life but always wondered about it, and it is the most awesome thing. And I mean, you can call it dance, you can call it yoga. Our traumas and what we move through is part of our cellular makeup, and movement and moving our breath and moving our bodies is a huge pathway to healing. Like just like your wellness, that checklist is like so important for us to have an anchor, to be doing things for ourself, and
Checking in on yourself. Like, am I doing this? Am I
like
making
you.
time for myself? Am I seeing my friends? I mean,
Mhm.
I think as a stay-at-home mom, the role that I've been in, I've been an entrepreneur and a stay-at-home mom. And so many times it's like, okay, I'm work, work, work. Okay, family, family, family. Oh yeah, I gotta go out to dinner with my husband. Wait, I don't see my friends. Like it's a constant balance. And I think that females have more to juggle, in my opinion, than anyone.
Yeah, well, we
Because
do. I mean,
of the
again, like
nature.
we take it on, right?
Yeah.
Some
Men
more
say
than
no a lot better than we do.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah, we're
well,
guessers.
100%. But it's that connection matters. And it's like, I go back and forth because sometimes like kind of as like having one vision of how something can grow, and then I click back to like, I don't know, stop with the pressure. Who cares? Like the gift of getting to be with these women every single week and just make art
It's
is
amazing.
one of the most healing things. And it's a huge thing that keeps you going. I mean, the mental component, like we've mentioned a bunch of times, is
That's bringing you joy. That's
so
your
huge.
joy.
Yeah, you have to like so we always we ask talk about like the pain scale, right? All the time. And doctors ask, right? Like where are you on a level of pain? And so like one of the things kind of like your checklist is I have like a five checklist, and the second thing on the checklist I call it choose your tude. So on a scale of 1 to 5, one of the first things you do in the morning is like you choose your two. Like 1 is kind of like meh, and 5 is like it's going to be an ass kicking day. And you choose the 5. Are you going to be at a 5 all day? No. However, when you consciously choose that anchor, you're going to find a way to get back to the 5 faster instead of letting something suck you in further. Even like if you're having a bad 5 day, a bad pain day, but you kind of wake up and you set that anchor for yourself, you're like, okay, what do I need to do to move myself back closer to that 5? And automatically, then you're asking the question of like, that's the be your own bestie. Like, in, typically we're conditioned to be like, what's wrong with you? Get your shit together.
Yeah.
Why can't you like,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And instead of being like, okay, like I'm so not at a 5 right now, graciously, like, what do I need to do to get back there? Okay, like, how do I nourish myself? Like, just your checklist. Like, do I need to give myself a nap or take a rest? And do I need to have extra water and
Oh my
hydrate?
God, totally.
How do I nourish
Totally.
myself? Like, what do I need to do? Do I need to just take a breath? What do I need to go do that one thing that brings me joy? Whatever it is.
Like owning your shit.
Yeah. It's just like giving you that anchor
Yeah.
to recognize where you are and then know that you have the power to choose to like pivot in a direction or lean into what's going to feel good. And that's such a huge part of healing.
Well, you have control, right? You're giving yourself some control and some authority to make some decision in a situation that you feel kind of helpless in.
Right.
That's so what you did with the dance company, and not only did it help you find your joy, I mean, all these people that were part of it, think about how you've affected them. I mean, clearly you have. And the fact now you're bringing everyone together. So you're gifting everyone involved. And now you're gifting everyone who comes to see you in your show. And you're gifting the community by, fundraising. Like what I tell people all the time is this giving back, like it gives you way more than you ever realize. So I think that's something, I took a little 5-year sabbatical after I sold Ostomy Secrets to kind of just, focus at home and get some things not work so much. And I felt like this empty hole in my heart for a long time. And I was like, am I just a workaholic? What is going on? And it took me some time and reflection to really understand that speaking to patients all the time, offering products that were solutions, talking to doctors and nurses every day, like was medicine for me. It completely gave me so much like love and confidence. And I just felt so good about giving back. And it was obviously I did it just because I loved it, like you do dance because you love it. But I think I underestimated or just wasn't aware of how much it helped me. Looking back, Ostomy Secrets was like a game changer for me. I mean, clearly for other people, I still wear my products. Like I still need them. So I'm really glad that it was a business and it was successful. And I made the products that I needed. That was like awesome. But that was like surface value, right? That was like easy.
Yeah. But
other stuff that came and talking about my story and sharing my story to people and then seeing in speaking venues all over, seeing the spouse tear up and the patient tear up because what I said resonated with them and made them feel validated, made them feel not alone. I mean, clearly I affected them, but it affected me, so the Secrets of Lemons platform is not just empowerment, but it's about, really motivating people with stories like yours, okay, to think about what area can they give back? What area will bring them joy? Because almost always when you give back, you will get joy. You will, especially if it's doing something.
Not almost. I think always.
Well, yeah. If I joke with people about like, you can't give expecting it, right? It has to be completely unconditional. But there are stories that I'm hoping to keep highlighting, like yours, that I hope inspire other people to move through their situation, like their lemons of their life will bring them blessings. And the blessings usually are the little secrets, the little gems. That's why Secrets of Lemons is named the way it is. Because all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, that was awesome. That's what made me feel so good. And so this kind of passion project, people keep asking, well, what's the business? What's the business? I'm like, it's not a business. It's just me giving back because it means something to me. Like, and now if this turns into speaking again, or, educating people on a broader level, like I would love to go into companies and teach and speak about my story on a broader level so that I could create more awareness, then great. Right. But the intention is just to get some really good stories out there to create like a little movement of people to feel encouraged to move forward. Because when this gets better, this gets affected.
Totally.
Our physical, right?
Part of it is that Me Too, like getting that Me Too experience. And there is another conversation about when you're navigating chronic pain, it's very easy to start isolating because you never know when your pain's going to come up. So you don't want to commit to hanging out with someone and then have to cancel, or you do cancel because you just can't get out of bed, and people don't really understand because you're also like, as women, like we're really good at not saying no. We're really good at hiding our pain. We're really good at like having the armor on. And part of like what you're saying with that service is that like that is a whole nother conversation of healing and understanding that we actually deserve to be receiving. And if you're not open to receiving, then you really can't pour out the way that you want to. Like when I did my yoga teacher training, he went through kind of an exercise, like put your priorities in place. And of course, you have like, your family and then your job and all these things. And he was like, now I know like most of you, your name's probably at the bottom. You have to put it at the top. You should be receiving equally what you're giving in anything you do in any job. And at the time, like my codependent old self was like, what? That doesn't
selfish.
That makes no sense to me whatsoever. However, like we also make it so hard for ourselves because if we literally sit and think about what feels good, what brings me joy, how can I share it with others, and you simply do that, like I can't tell you the amount of jobs I had or the amount of things that I forced myself to do that weren't in alignment, like because just to like make the money or try to do this and always feeling frustrated that like things never felt right. And then all of a sudden you soften into like how can I give back with this? What feels good? And I started doing those things, like the abundance flows in, doors open. You're like, wait, this is crazy. Like that I'm not like, there's no resistance. It's just kind of flowing and happening. And like, and I'm feeling, because it's all vibration, right? It's all energy. That's Choose Your Toot is my second one. My third one is Raise Your Vibe, Move, Unblock, and Flow. Like, what do you need to do to raise your vibe up? And what you're saying, like, it starts with our thoughts, right? It starts with how we're choosing our day, how we're taking that responsibility. But if we're not doing things to fill up and raise that like positive charged energy, that's the only way we attract more of that positive charge.
It's another snowball in the positive direction. Well, anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for doing this today. And I do hope we could do this again. I think this would be amazing to tackle the mental health stuff. And in these sections. So we have like a to be continued.
100%. Yeah. I'll leave you with one of my favorite sayings, like, watch your thoughts, they become your words, watch your words, they become your actions, watch your actions, they become your destiny, right? Like it's all related and it's all connected. So we have to start, affirming and focusing on what we want and feeling good, but knowing you deserve to feel good.
All of us do. Yeah. But remember, there's different ways to feel good. So we could control this and then hopefully the other stuff comes. So anyway, Meredith, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You're the best. Have an awesome week and an awesome day.